It was a Thursday evening when I came home, unwinding from a long day at work, just as my wife Cassie returned from her own job, the one she'd started only 3 months earlier. She worked in the personnel department of a large marketing firm run by a woman named Victoria, whom I'd met only once when picking Cassie up. Victoria had taken her under her wing from day one, guiding her through the maze of corporate life, or so I thought. Cassie stepped inside carrying bags of Chinese food, along with her usual purse and laptop satchel. She looked up, smiled, and said, "Here, take these," motioning to the food. "Set the table, honey. I'm gonna change really quick." She kissed me lightly on the cheek before heading upstairs. As she disappeared, I noticed something in her. Nervousness, excitement, and uncertainty all at once. And I sensed that something big was about to happen, something that wouldn't be good. When she returned, she was wearing a short teddy with stockings. My heart sank. I knew instantly this night wasn't going to go the way I'd hoped. We sat at the table in silence for a few moments, eating without a word. Finally, she looked up and said what I had dreaded. "Honey, I need to talk to you about us." I set my fork down gently and let out a quiet sigh, hoping she wouldn't hear. "What's on your mind, dear?" Her gaze locked on mine, nerves flickering in her eyes, though her mouth stayed firm, as if she'd already decided. Then she dropped it, blunt as a hammer. "I need us to open the marriage. I need the freedom to explore with other people." The words echoed in my head, heavy and strange, like I'd misheard them but knew I hadn't. My jaw clenched. "Open the marriage?" I asked. "You mean you want to sleep with other men?" Cassie didn't flinch. If anything, her eyes steadied, her chin lifting as if she'd rehearsed this moment. "Because it's right for us," she said simply. "Rowan, this isn't just about me. I know it sounds scary, maybe even selfish, but it isn't. Opening up will give us both room to breathe, to grow." She paused, then added, "It's only temporary, maybe a month or two. Then I'll close it again, be the best wife to you, maybe even start a family." Her certainty made my chest ache. She truly believed this, had convinced herself it was the best way forward, even if it split me open in the process. "I know it'll hurt at first," she went on, her voice calm, almost reassuring, like she was explaining a hard truth to a child. "But you'll see. You'll get used to it. Maybe you'll even like it. Could make us stronger." She took a sip of water and met my gaze as if she hadn't just turned our life inside out. "You really believe sleeping with other men will bring us closer?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "And does that mean I get to sleep with other women?" Cassie gave me a look of patient condescension, as though she were explaining something obvious. "Rowan, this is different for you and me," she said. "I need to do the exploring. I need to see what's out there, to figure out who I am outside of just us. That doesn't mean you don't matter. It means you're my anchor. You make it safe for me to do this." Her tone was soothing, but every word pressed me deeper into my chair. "You don't need to look for anyone else," she continued. "That's not who you are. You've always been steady, loyal. That's what makes this possible. I can trust you to be here waiting while I find what I need to find." She reached across the table, brushing my hand as if that would soften the blow. "This isn't about replacing you. It's about me. And when I come back, it'll be better. For both of us. So you expect me to sit here like a faithful puppy while you go spread your legs for any and every man that blows in your ear?" I stated, trying to suppress my rising anger and frustration. "You don't have to be so crude about it, but this for the best, and I know we will be stronger for it." She spoke as if on script. She glanced away for just a moment, and that's when I saw it. An earbud embedded in her right ear covered by her hair. She was not only ending our marriage, but she was being coached on how to do it. Victoria, that harpy, her boss and the one in charge of turning that department into a swingers club. The one who was corrupting my wife and trying to turn our marriage into an experiment. I forced myself to be calm and measured because I wanted to see how far this was to go. "So how is this supposed to work? You go out and meet men and then what? Get a hotel or go to their place?" I awaited, dreading the answer. Cassie gave me a look that was almost patient, like she was explaining something obvious. I will see other men, sometimes at their place, sometimes I will bring them here. I see no point in spending money on hotels when it's not necessary. On those nights you can sleep in the guest room and then eventually you can watch us or even join in. The audacity was astounding, but she continued without pause. As for you meeting other women, it would be different as I am the one that needs to explore, and besides you don't need to go looking for anyone else. That's not who you are. I let her words settle, watching her across the table. My face stayed even, but inside I felt the sting of how casually she'd boxed me in. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. You're saying I'm supposed to stay put while you go out and explore. And when you're done, you'll just come back here, and everything will be fine. Cassie's mouth opened, but I held up a hand, keeping my tone measured. And you're certain that's what's best for us? Not just for you. Her eyes flickered, just for a second. Tell me, I pressed gently. What happens if I don't feel fine sitting here alone while you're with someone else? If you're not fine with it, you'll have to learn to be. This is happening either way. I tilted my head slightly, studying her. My voice stayed calm, curious even, but shook my head. So that's it then? Cassie gave me a look, eyebrows lifting as if I just missed the point entirely. Yes, she said flatly. That's exactly it. I go out, I explore, and I come back. You don't need to make it more complicated than that. Her tone sharpened with certainty, like she was explaining something to a child who refused to understand. I sat back, her words still ringing in my ears. There was no hesitation in her voice, no room for debate. She'd already chosen this path, and the voice in her ear was giving her the strength she needed to push forward. And I could see in her eyes that nothing I said tonight would change it. Okay, I said simply, but I want to state clearly that I am not for this and believe that this will end our marriage, and am giving you one last chance to put this fantasy away and focus on our relationship. She didn't react, most likely getting direction through her earpiece. However, if this is what you want, it is obvious I can't do anything to change your mind, so there needs to be rules. Rules? She asked, not expecting the response. What rules? I held her gaze for a long moment, then leaned forward, lacing my fingers together on the table. My voice stayed even, but there was no mistaking the steel underneath. Cassie blinked, startled, maybe even a little annoyed, but I pressed on before she could object. First, you do not bring anyone into our home. This is our sanctuary, and I won't have it stained with your betrayal. If you're with someone else, it's outside these walls. Her lips parted, but I kept going. Second, while you're exploring, there will be no sex between us. You don't get to split yourself in two and expect me to just take the scraps. If you're giving yourself away out there, then I won't share you here. The flicker in her eyes told me she hadn't expected that one. And third, I continued, my tone steady, you don't sleep beside me while this is going on. You stay in the guest room. If you're stepping out of the marriage bed, then you don't get to come back to it on your terms. Cassie shifted in her chair, her confidence finally bending under the weight of my calm. One more thing, I said. For the first week, you leave. Stay somewhere else with Valerie for all I care. I need time and space to process everything. If you're serious about this, then you'll give me that time without question. Victoria, her name is. I cut her off. I don't really care. I believe without a doubt that she has influenced you to go this path and want to plead with you one last time to stop this insanity before it begins. Cassie sat still without responding. She was almost imperceptibly nodding her head as it was being filled with more dialogue directly through her ear, like an injection of sedative to numb her brain of the reality of pain that she was bringing. Not just to me, but to herself. Fine, she said, her tone clipped. She tried to soften it then, her voice losing a little of its edge. I don't want to hurt you, Rowan. If these rules help you, then I can follow them. Her hand brushed mine across the table again, as though that simple touch could erase the sting of her words. You'll see. It won't always feel like this. You'll adjust. So when do you plan on moving out, Cass? When does this first week apart begin? She hesitated only a moment before lifting her chin, answering with that same matter-of-fact tone she'd carried all night. Tomorrow. Friday. I'll pack tonight, and after work I'll head straight out. I'll figure out where to go." Her words carried no trace of doubt, like she'd already rehearsed them, and I suspected she already knew the destination. "One last thing then." She froze, thinking the conversation was over. "I need to know where you are going to be staying for emergency purposes. If something happens, I don't need to be wasting time looking for you." "Of course," she responded immediately, which indicated to me that it was actually her response and not that of her inner ear voice. "This was never about being apart from you, and I am a little disappointed that you want me to leave. I want you to share in my journey but understand how difficult this is for you." I nodded slowly, watching her. "Tomorrow, then," I said, my voice even. Inside, though, the clock she had just started in motion ticked loud in my chest. The rest of the night faded away, where we eventually ended up in our bed making love to my wife as if this were the last time. All the anger and fury of what transpired that night exploding in a climax that shook us both into exhaustion. Of course, Cassie mistook this passion to mean that I was secretly on board with her decision because she had not felt that fire in me since we married 5 years ago, and believed her open relationship idea had spurred the change in me. Little did she know. She woke up early in a good mood and started packing her things for her week away while I started on breakfast. When she finally finished, she had 2 suitcases ready to go. While we ate, I once again pleaded with her not to go, to no avail. The brainwashing had a complete hold over her, and she was dead set on following through with this fantasy. Cassie loaded her car, kissed me on the lips, and bid me goodbye. "Tell Veronica hi for me." She hesitated for a moment with a stern look. "It's Victoria." As she departed for work, my day started. My plan that I had been formulating for the last 2 weeks began in earnest. What Cassie did not know was that Jennifer, a young new hire at the firm she and Victoria worked at, had contacted me 2 weeks prior to Cassie's demand of an open relationship and had asked to set up a meeting. "Thank you for meeting me," Jennifer said softly. "I wasn't sure if I should even reach out, but you deserve to know." I leaned forward, keeping my expression calm, inviting. "Know what?" Her eyes flickered down, then back to me, her voice low but certain. "What's happening at work? Victoria, the department head, has turned the entire floor into a brothel where everyone is encouraged to cheat on their partners. They talk about open marriages like it's the new normal, like it's the smart thing to do. And they're not subtle." She hesitated. "No one talks about it, but they have sex in the offices, in the storeroom, and in the bathrooms. It's disgusting, and they have been trying to convince your wife to join them." I kept my jaw relaxed, though inside, the words settled heavily. Jennifer hesitated, then added, "They approached me, too. Tried to pull me into their little group dynamic. Said I'd be missing out if I didn't at least try." I shut it down, but it's constant. And it's not just casual chatter. It's pressure. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. "It gets worse. They tell their spouses that this is a temporary situation, and eventually, they will come back to resume their relationship as if nothing had happened. The truth is they intend to intimidate the spouses into cucks and get them to participate in their games. There are several guys that work there that act like Victoria's enforcers, forcing husbands to watch them with their wives and mocking them for their weakness. There is no end in sight. Victoria's own husband has been serving her whims for years." I sat in silence for a moment and looked at Jennifer and simply asked, "Are you willing to help me burn this all to the ground?" She smiled and nodded. "What do you need me to do?" After that conversation, we made plans, and I prepared for the oncoming storm. Back in the present day, I called in sick from work and began to secure my house. I had purchased new locks for all the doors in the prior weeks and had them ready to go in the garage, and it only took an hour to replace them all, as well as resetting the garage door codes. I had already contacted a lawyer and then hired a private investigator to follow her around. At the behest of my lawyer, I had divorce papers drawn up, as well as civil lawsuits against several individuals, as well as the company itself for breach of ethics and morality clause breaches in their employment contracts. My lawyer stated most of this was most likely going to be thrown out in court, but I didn't care and said that I want to throw everything at the wall to see what would stick. Jennifer, on the other hand, also filed suits against the company for the hostile work environment and had spent the last 2 weeks secretly recording conversations directed toward her and between others. Not necessarily legal, but the HR department would certainly be interested, or at the very least social media if all else failed. Petty, perhaps, but Vanessa. Damn it, Victoria needed to face consequences she believed she was above, considering she convinced my wife that I was so weak that I would accept my wife's betrayal and somehow crawl back to participate in their humiliation of me. I found out by that afternoon that Cassie had been given an extended stay hotel room, arranged by Virginia or whatever her name was, funded by her company for clients and out-of-town employees assigned temporarily to this location. The private investigator forwarded that information to my lawyer and asked that he update Jennifer, who he was also representing. I returned home Friday night and continued the process of separating our accounts and financial lives. During this time, I opened an app that connected to a microphone that the private investigator had installed in Cassie's hotel room. Illegal perhaps, but with everything that I had discovered so far, I wasn't going to get blindsided.
I arrived at the hotel room that Victoria had arranged for my first week away from home, and as I unpacked there was a knock on the door. I opened it and Victoria walked in confidently with an air of excitement. "Are you ready for your journey of exploration?" She smiled confidently. "I don't really know," I answered reservedly. Victoria tilted her head, almost amused at the answer, then sat on the bed, patting the bed beside her. She crossed her legs, her tone smooth, deliberate. "You having second thoughts?" "No, maybe, no," I stuttered out. "I just don't understand why you told me to accept his rules when I thought I was supposed to be setting the terms." Victoria leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Because if you'd challenge him, you'd have lost. He was ready for that. He expected you to resist, to make it into a battle he could win. But when you accepted, when you let him believe he was setting the terms. Rowan can be really stubborn," I replied meekly. "Exactly. He now thinks he is in control, but he loves you and will never leave you," Victoria said confidently. "All men go through this in varying degrees, and Rowan is no different. He will eventually see that he can't lose you and will accede to your every whim." I asked, "So what now?" Victoria continued, "You let him think his rules matter, but when it's time to break them, publicly, boldly, he'll be powerless. That's when you take back everything." My head was still spinning from Victoria's words when the older woman leaned back on the bed, stretching like a cat. "You want to know how to flip it?" Victoria asked, her tone suddenly playful, but with steel underneath. "How to stop him from thinking he can control you with those little rules of his." I looked up, hesitant. "What do you mean?" Victoria's eyes narrowed, gleaming. "You make the house yours again. You show him that he doesn't get to dictate what happens under that roof. That's where he feels strongest, his kingdom, his sanctuary. So you poison it. You bring your own power inside." I frowned, unsure. "And how do I do that?" Victoria's smile widened. "You've got 2 men in your office who drop everything for a chance with you, don't you? I see the way they look at you. You bring them home. Both of them. Walk through that door like you own the place, and make it clear what's about to happen. Rowan won't know whether to scream, leave, or just stand there and watch. And that's the beauty of it, you control his humiliation either way." I blinked, heat rising in my chest. "You're saying I should actually have sex with them, in front of him?" Victoria shrugged, casual as if she were suggesting a change in wine order. "If he stays, he watches. If he can't stomach it, he leaves his own house to you and your men. Either way, you win and you shatter his illusion of control." I sat back, my pulse quickening. The image was wild, dangerous, but also intoxicating. For the first time since Rowan had set those rules, I felt something close to power. Victoria reached out, resting a hand on my knee. "You asked me why I told you to accept his rules. It's because rules only matter when you play by them. Tonight, you stop playing." The SUV rumbled to a stop, and my pulse quickened. The house looked different in the dark, every window black, every corner too still. I told myself it was nothing, that Rowan had probably gone to bed early, sulking in his silence. Still, the sight of it made my stomach tighten. I slid out of the passenger seat first, the men following close behind. Their confidence steadied me, two tall shadows flanking me as if they could carry out Victoria's promise for me. This was going to be my moment. I climbed the porch steps and fit my key into the lock. The metal scraped, stuck. I frowned and twisted harder, but it wouldn't turn. A cold shiver crawled up my neck. I tried again, my lips pressed tight, pretending I wasn't panicking. Behind her, one of the men chuckled. "What's the matter?" I forced a smile. "He must have changed the locks." The words tasted bitter as soon as I said them. I rapped my knuckles against the door. "Then I guess you will just have to punish him," one of the men said. Both of them laughed quietly. "Rowan? Open up." Nothing. The silence pressed down around me. Another knock. Harder. "Rowan, I know you're in there." Still nothing. The dark windows gave nothing back. The men muttered to each other, low and impatient, their voices sharpening. Cassie caught one phrase, "We'll find a way and then teach him a lesson." My breath caught. I told herself this was strength, that this was her taking back control. But deep down, a flicker of doubt gnawed at me. The house loomed dark and silent, as though it were watching me, waiting. I stayed on the porch while the men split off, one circling left, the other right. From where I stood I could hear them rattling handles, thumping on windows, cursing under their breath when everything stayed locked tight. The house felt alive in its silence. A few minutes later they came back around and met at the side door that led into the garage. One of them yanked at the knob and looked over his shoulder at me. Locked. I folded my arms, trying not to show the knot in my stomach. "Try it," I said, sharper than I meant to. The other rapped his knuckle against the small glass pane in the door and smirked. "One hit, we're in." My throat went dry. I nodded anyway, quick and shallow, pretending I wasn't afraid. He picked up a rock from nearby. The night went quiet, too quiet, like the whole world was waiting for the sound of breaking glass. The smirk spread across his face. He stepped back, raised the rock, and drove it through the small window in the door. The crack of glass split the night, sharp and final. I flinched, every nerve in my body sparking, but I held my ground. He cleared the jagged shards with his sleeve, then reached through, fumbling for the lock. A click, and the door eased open. The crash of the glass still rang in my ears as we stepped into the garage. The air was thick, smelling of oil and dust, the concrete echoing under every step. I tried to steady my breathing, tried to convince myself this was still my plan, still my moment. Then movement caught my eye. Rowan stood in the doorway that led into the house, tall, rigid, lit only by the pale glow of his phone. In his other hand, a gun gleamed, steady and unshaking. "Get out," he said, voice low, cutting through the dark. The men froze. One of them cursed under his breath, the other shifted like he might lunge. Rowan raised the gun, and the first shots cracked like thunder. Muzzle flashes lit his face, calm and merciless. "Go!" I shouted before I even realized the word left me. My co-workers didn't even hear me as they bolted for the side door with me close behind them. My heels slipped on the concrete as I stumbled, glass crunching underfoot, adrenaline pushing me forward. We burst into the night and sprinted for the SUV. I threw myself into the back seat as the others climbed in, and the engine roared alive. Tires screamed against the asphalt, the vehicle fishtailing before it shot down the street. I twisted in my seat, heart pounding, watching the house shrink into the dark. Rowan was still there in my mind's eye, framed in that doorway, phone glowing, gun in hand, unyielding. The sound of gunfire still ringing in my ears as the SUV carried me away. Back in the hotel room, the air felt stifling, thick with failure and the smell of my own sweat. I'd barely dropped my purse on the chair when the door slammed shut behind us. "What the hell just happened?" One of them barked. He had a gun, Cassie. A gun. The other paced in tight circles, running his hands through his hair. "You didn't tell us your husband was psycho enough to pull that on us." "Jesus," I thought I was about to die in that garage. I pressed my hands to my temples, trying to find words. He wasn't supposed to. Supposed to what? Try and kill us? The first man cut me off. Then, a knock. Sharp, quick, almost impatient. We all jumped out of our skin before one of the men opened it without asking, and Victoria swept in, heels clicking against the cheap carpet, perfume filling the stale air. Her gaze darted over the three of us, assessing in an instant. Well, she said smoothly, from the looks on your faces, I'm guessing it didn't go as planned. That's putting it mildly, we nearly got our heads blown off. One of the men stated nervously. The police are no doubt looking for us right now. No one is looking for you. Victoria shook her head condescendingly. The police have no idea who it was that tried to break in because the reports were vague as Rowan apparently couldn't identify the burglars. How do you know that? I asked, curious and confused. Victoria just looked at me as if I were a child. My dear husband likes to listen to the police scanner as a hobby, and while I was preoccupied with one of my lovers tonight, he filled me in, well, while I was being filled in. She smiled deviously, running a hand up my leg, causing me to shudder. And besides, she continued, even if they found you, it would be a simple explanation of a wife and her friend simply getting locked out and trying to find another way in and being mistaken in the dark for burglars. So relax, nothing bad is going to happen. Nothing bad? One of the men shook his head. You were not the one who got shot at, that is a serious boner killer. He held up his hands to show how much they were shaking. Victoria looked at him with a pitiable gaze. I would suggest that you all have some fun here and now, but it seems the mood has been lost, so why don't you two idiots, looking at the two men, go home and drink it off, and we will talk later and I will make it up to you this coming week. I think that new girl, Jennifer, is coming around, so you two can decide who gets her first. The two men left, leaving me alone with Victoria. I'm sorry, I didn't know that Rowan would react this way. Victoria looked annoyed. Didn't I just tell you that Rowan couldn't identify the intruders, meaning he did not know it was you and reacted as if they were actual burglars? So this changes nothing, we just have to be more direct in putting him in his place instead of sneaking around. What do you have in mind? I asked, the excitement returning. You have a threesome right here with two men, or women, or your choice, and we will film it, then send the video straight to Rowan. Once he sees it, it will show him you are serious about this, and, although he may be hurt and angry, he will have to accept the reality of what his new life with you will look like. She narrated like a director envisioning a scene in an adult movie as she walked around the room. Are you sure that will work? I asked, feeling a little trepidation at being filmed. Of course it will, have I ever steered you wrong? Victoria grabbed my shoulders and smiled. No, I replied, you have been right about everything so far, and tonight was just a terrible misunderstanding because I must have woken Rowan up and startled him when we tried to get in the house. I convinced myself. Exactly. Victoria exuded a confidence that made me feel powerful. So let's forget about tonight and focus on tomorrow. Let me make the arrangements and you decide who you want to have as your playmates. I went to bed but couldn't sleep, the events of tonight playing in my mind and the promises of tomorrow overshadowing the setback. Rowan would see that this is the best thing for us, for me, and by Monday our new life can truly begin.
I lowered the gun, exhaling slowly. My other hand still held the phone, the dispatcher's voice steady in my ear. They're gone, I said. My voice came out calm, measured, almost detached. Shots fired, but no one hit. They fled in a black SUV. Officers are already en route, sir. Stay where you are. Within minutes, red and blue lights danced across the front windows. I pulled the magazine and emptied the chamber of the pistol and laid it on the kitchen counter, opened the front door, and waited on the porch with my hands visible. Two officers approached cautiously. You reported a break-in? One asked. I nodded. Three of them came through the garage door. I was on the phone with dispatch when they tried to force their way in. Did you recognize them? Get a good look. For half a second I considered it, the truth balanced on the edge of my tongue. I saw Cassie when she had stepped from the vehicle. I knew the men too. I had met them both on several occasions when visiting Cassie at her office. But instead I shook my head, calm and steady. No, it was dark. They moved fast. Couldn't make out faces. The officers exchanged a look, one scribbling notes. Description of the vehicle? Black SUV, I repeated. It was too dark to make out the plate number. One of the officers examined the weapon and showed the lead investigator something, and they both smiled. The lead officer looked at me amusingly. Blanks? He asked. All bark and no bite, I shrugged nonchalantly. It got the job done, and I don't need to clean up any blood stains. One of the officers laughed, then said, but the urine stains and shit stains can be just as difficult. I smirked as the lead investigator gave him a stern look and told him to go outside before looking at me again with finality. Between stand your ground laws and the fact that you use non-lethal means for defense, I don't see charges coming your way, but the final decision is up to the district attorney, although after submitting my report, doubt he will bother much with this. However, you might consider putting lights and maybe some security cameras just in case. I just nodded, and then the officers finally left. The house fell quiet again. I closed the door, turned the lock, and stood in the center of the living room, the weight of the night pressing down. Cassie had made her move. Now it was my turn.
I sat at the edge of the hotel bed, staring at the expensive lingerie folded neatly on the blanket. My stomach was a knot of nerves and nausea. Victoria moved around the room with practiced ease, adjusting the tripod and checking the angle of her phone's camera. 10 more minutes, she murmured, tapping the screen. They'll be here soon. I swallowed hard. I can't believe I'm doing this, I said. My voice barely rose above a whisper. He'll lose his mind if he sees it. That's the point, Victoria replied gently. She wasn't sharp now, she was calm, almost motherly. She came over and smoothed a hand over my hair. This is about you enjoying yourself, and it's about sending a message. Showing him you're not afraid to cross lines. I shut the bathroom door and took one last look at myself in the mirror. This time there was no tremor in my hands. The black lace clung to my skin, stockings held by slim garters, perfume drifting up from my collarbone. Victoria's words from the last hour still echoed in my head, about freedom, about showing Rowan he had nothing to fear, that me taking control would be the best thing for our marriage. In the bedroom, Victoria moved quietly, checking the camera one more time, dimming the lights to a low amber glow. She glanced at me when I came out and her expression softened. She straightened a strap on my shoulder, smoothed a wrinkle from my stocking like a proud stage manager before a big entrance. You look incredible, she said. Her tone was still gentle, coaxing. And remember, this is your night. Your choice. No apologies. I gave a small, determined nod. I know what I'm doing. That's my girl, she murmured. I perched on the edge of the bed, legs crossed, trying to look relaxed as I heard the muffled sound of an elevator door down the hall. The two men would be at the door any moment. This was supposed to be wild, liberating, proof that I was in control. Inside, though, a tiny part of me wondered what Rowan would do when he found out, and whether Victoria was right about how he'd react. A knock at the door jolted me upright. Victoria gave me an encouraging nod and stepped aside as I crossed the room. When I opened it, the two men walked in with cocky grins, jackets already off. They barely looked at Victoria, their eyes fixed on me. Wow, one of them murmured. You weren't kidding. I managed a smile, my heartbeat steady. Drinks are over there, I said, gesturing to the minibar. And everything else you'll need. On the dresser sat a small bottle of clear lubricant I had brought from home and a stack of folded towels. It all looked rehearsed, clinical. The men began peeling off their clothes, tossing shirts and belts onto a chair. I tried to keep my face composed, even as a faint, unpleasant heat started to spread across my skin under the lace. At first I thought it was nerves. Then it began to sting. I shifted on my feet, rubbing my thighs together. Something wasn't right. Go on, try it, Victoria said softly, handing the bottle to one of the men. He grinned and squeezed a little onto his palm, then onto his manhood. A moment later his smile faltered. Jesus, he hissed, wiping at his hands. What is in this stuff? The other man had already used some, and now he was doubled over, swearing under his breath. The heat in my own body sharpened into a fiery itch. My eyes went wide. The heat had become a living thing. It wasn't just an itch anymore, it felt like thousands of hot needles pricking across my skin under the lace. I clawed at my panties, trying to pull the fabric away from me, but it only made it worse. Across the room the two men were in even worse shape, faces red, eyes watering, doubling over, swearing through clenched teeth as they tried to rinse their hands and groins in the bathroom's sink and shower. It's like fire, one of them gasped, splashing water again and again. It won't stop. The other was pacing in frantic little circles, one hand gripping the counter, the other waving helplessly. Call 911. This is, oh God. No, Victoria snapped sharply, then softened her tone. No ambulances. Too many questions. You don't want cops or EMTs writing this down, do you? She crouched beside me, her palm on my back. Get dressed. I'll drive you all myself. ERs don't care what happened, they just treat symptoms. I managed to yank on a robe, sweat beading on my forehead. The two men stared at her, eyes wide with panic but also calculation. One shook his head violently. We can't show up in an ambulance, our wives, our jobs. Exactly, Victoria said, voice now almost maternal. No one needs to know. My car's right outside. 10 minutes, you'll be in triage. Another wave of burning heat rolled through me and I doubled over, teeth clenched. Just go, I hissed. Victoria grabbed the keys from the dresser, stuffed the offending bottle into her purse, and herded us toward the door. The men hobbled after her, trying to walk without rubbing against their own skin. In the hallway we must have looked like a scene from a nightmare, 3 people bent and grimacing, and one woman briskly leading them to the elevator. At the hospital, I sat on the edge of the exam table in a paper gown, clutching the thin sheet the nurse had given me. The harsh fluorescent lights and antiseptic smell made the night feel even more unreal. The doctor came back in with a clipboard, his expression professional but not unkind. Good news first, he said. This isn't permanent. No chemical burns, nothing systemic. What you're experiencing is a very strong topical irritant, basically a concentrated capsaicin extract, like what's in hot peppers, combined with a contact allergen. My cheeks burned for a different reason. So, we're not dying? No, he said with a small smile. It's just extremely uncomfortable. We've washed off what we can, and we'll send you home with a prescription cream to neutralize the reaction and calm the skin. You need to avoid heat, friction, and any sexual activity for a few days to let the area settle down. I nodded numbly, still trying to process how the night had flipped upside down. Victoria sat quietly in the corner, hands folded, looking more like a concerned aunt than the architect of the evening. The doctor handed me a small tube of ointment and a sheet of printed instructions. Apply this twice a day, he said. It'll sting for a moment but then cool things off. And don't hesitate to come back if it worsens. Thank you, I murmured. They've given the same ointment to the men, Victoria said quietly. Same instructions, same pain. Everyone's going to be out of commission for a few days. I held the little tube of cream between my fingers. So that's it? All of this for nothing. She let out a long breath and, to my surprise, didn't immediately launch into reassurance. I misjudged him, Cassie. I really did. She stared at the floor, twisting her hands. I thought Rowan was a man you could push, a man who'd fold when you showed him you weren't afraid. But he's not. He's patient, he's prepared, and he's not a pushover. Tonight proved that. I blinked at her. So what now? I don't know, she said, voice low. I've been so sure of every step up to this point. Now, she looked at me, and for the first time there was no steel behind her eyes, just exhaustion. Now I'm not sure how to proceed. Silence hung between us, punctuated by the sounds of nurses moving in the corridor. Victoria reached out and squeezed my hand anyway. Focus on getting better. We'll rethink everything when you're healed. No more stunts until then. She stood slowly, collected her bag, and smoothed her face back into neutrality. But as she turned to leave, her shoulders sagged again and she muttered, almost to herself, "I've never been this wrong about someone." Then she straightened and walked out, leaving me alone with the cream, the sting, and 1,000 new questions. The weekend passed without incident. I stayed mostly in my hotel room, wearing loose clothes, dutifully applying the cream the doctor had given me. The sting faded to an occasional itch, but the embarrassment lingered. Victoria stopped by on Sunday. "You look better," she said. "How's the healing?" "Fine," I said. "No more fire." I tried to make it sound like a joke, but it landed flat. She laughed anyway and then leaned in, lowering her voice. "Good. Because when you're back to 100%, we should pick up where we left off. Not the same stunt, of course. Something quieter, controlled. Someone at the office, maybe. I'm the one who controls that floor, you could choose who, where, when. No surprises." I blinked at her. "You already have someone in mind?" "Not yet," she said lightly, stirring her coffee. "Just options. We'll plan it properly this time. It'll be easy with the focus on just getting you having fun and getting laid instead of trying to make a statement." I nodded slowly, a small, strange flicker of excitement building inside me. I was looking forward to getting back to work in the office. Monday morning the air in the office felt electric, like static before a storm. I was just stepping out of the elevator with Victoria when this young woman I had not seen before approached and asked, "Are you Cassandra Harper and Victoria Caldwell?" I blinked. "Yes." She smiled sweetly, then handed me a thick envelope, pulled from a briefcase. "You've been served." She turned immediately to Victoria. Another envelope. Down the hall, Marcus Whitaker and Jason Paul, the two men Victoria had lined up for me before everything went wrong, had been waiting near the break room. They were each intercepted by the process server, papers exchanged with the same flat efficiency. But she didn't stop. The process server continued through the office, the briefcase bottomless until nearly a dozen others were also handed paperwork. All we could do is stare with disbelief. The four of us went into Victoria's office and began opening our envelopes. Victoria went first and discovered divorce papers from her husband, the same man she had believed was under her thumb and would do anything for her, including enduring betrayal. Along with that there was a lawsuit from Rowan accusing her of an alienation of affection. "Now he gets my name right." Victoria cursed under her breath, throwing the folder on her desk. Mine contained a petition for divorce. "No, no, no." I cried, "This couldn't be happening, this isn't the way that it was supposed to turn out." All the others contained separation decrees or divorce papers. It was an avalanche of legal documents burying a dozen relationships in an instant. We later found that Jennifer, sweet little Jen, had been working behind the scenes with Rowan and had herself filed suit against the company for breach of contract and hostile work environment for the attempts to persuade her to join the games. The fallout was epic. Human Resources and outside counsel moved in first, interviewing everyone who had ever been at one of Victoria's after-hours networking sessions. What had been whispered about as harmless games now read, in the cold light of policy, as a string of moral clause violations and potential liabilities. With the evidence that Jennifer had quietly gathered while pretending to show interest had paid off with benefits. Victoria chose to resign than be dragged through the turmoil, dealing with her husband's newfound courage to divorce her, and because of a prenuptial agreement that had been signed but long forgotten, Victoria walked away with only what she had in her name. Jason and Marcus' wives both took the evidence Jennifer had given them and they left them with little more than the clothes on their backs, and last anyone heard were roommates in a single-bedroom apartment working retail in a local mall. Out of 18 employees in that department, 11 were fired or were forced to resign. As for me, I went home to beg for forgiveness, and since I hadn't actually physically cheated I felt there was some hope for me. I was wrong. The door was unlocked, he was expecting me.
Cassie crept in the front door as if she was trying to sneak in after curfew. As I sat at the kitchen table and watched her, she looked at me in a sorrowful way. "Rowan?" Cassie's voice, quiet, tentative. I didn't answer. For a second I thought about the woman I'd married, the easy laugh, the warmth. Then I remembered nights alone. Her insane plans, the cops at my door. "I'm home," Cassie said softly. "I came to talk, to say I'm sorry. I want to fix this." "Cassie," I said, and even to me it sounded like a sigh. "There's nothing left to fix." She moved closer. "Please. It never happened. I didn't cross that line. We can start over." It stung, hearing her try to frame it as one line, one act. It wasn't the act. It was the betrayal, the weeks of lies, the plans whispered under my roof. I had lived with a stranger. And why do you think that happened? Not because you didn't want to, but because I sabotaged every effort. You cheated long ago in your mind and in your heart. Then, when you thought I had agreed to your demands, you still blatantly tried to violate my rules by bringing those men to my house. You showed me you have no respect for me or this relationship, and only now want reconciliation because you have no other place to go. I was almost shouting at this point. "I still love you," she whispered. I shook my head slowly. "There's no love or trust left in this house. Not for me. Not for you. The best thing you can do is sign the papers and go." I gestured to a stack of papers on the table in front of me. "I can't, Rowan, please don't make me go." I was stupid and allowed myself to be manipulated by someone who I believed was right only to find how wrong I was. "Let me fix this." I shook my head slowly. "You can't fix what's broken in me. You didn't just kill what we had, you killed something inside me. I'm not just incapable of trusting you. I can't trust anyone. I don't even recognize myself anymore." She broke down sobbing, the agonizing wails of someone who finally realized the destruction they had wrought and becoming aware that some wounds could never heal. "I will do anything," Cassie repeated, and for some reason something shifted in me. A cold calm overtook me, and all I could bring myself to say was, "Anything." Then a pause. "Okay." Cassie hesitated, unsure of what she just heard. "You will sleep in the guest room tonight. Do not talk to me. Don't even acknowledge my existence. Tomorrow we will talk again, and we will see what anything really means to you." 24 hours later, we were back at the kitchen table. Cassie looked like she hadn't slept and looked at me with trepidation.
I had told Rowan I would do anything to try to fix what I had destroyed. Now, I sat at the table, staring at 2 envelopes before me. One contained divorce papers. He lifted them carefully, showing me that signing would split everything fairly: the house, the life we had built. Finality. The other was a post-nuptial. If I stayed, any future betrayal on my part would leave me destitute, homeless, stripped of everything I owned. I would become nothing more than a servant in my own home, living at his mercy. He told me I could stay as long as I was useful, but the moment it became too much, the open door awaited, divorce, ready for me to take. He painted it plainly: no love, no trust, separate rooms. I would keep the house, cook the meals, and any intimacy would come only on his terms, dictated by whim and mood. It was cruel. Unthinkable. And yet, I loved him. I truly did. Despite the horror of his terms, despite the gnawing fear that I was signing away everything that made me me, I made the only choice I could. This was my chance, to prove, against all odds, that we could find our way back to the happy couple we once were. The first 6 months were brutal. Rowan tested me in every way imaginable, pushing, tempting, prodding, but I endured. Slowly, after 8 months, he began allowing me into his bed a few nights a week. Progress. A fragile, precarious progress. My family and friends couldn't understand. They urged me to leave, to reclaim a life they saw as mine. But they never understood, and maybe they never would. I knew where I belonged. He attached the divorce papers on the refrigerator with a magnet, a cold, constant reminder of the open door. Every day he encouraged me to take it, but as time passed, he mentioned it less and less. "I am happy. Not unscathed, not untouched, and not in the way I might have been if I had never been poisoned by the seductive lies of a lifestyle disguised as freedom but engineered for destruction, but happy nonetheless. Yet, compared to the alternative, alone, miserable, lost to illusions that devour everything, they are ashes. I have found paradise here, in the narrow, terrifying, and fragile space of us.